How are we going to fix that one? Well, the way that we're going to fix that one is we're going to re-3D print this particular item and pick that up and take it up that way so we can get it out of the way of that particular foot there. There's the ignition barrel there, and you can see you've got what appears to be, well, it's not appears, it actually is the front of the foot of the CSL yoke. It's in the line of fire, I believe, of my ignition barrel. So if I turn that upside down, there's the foot there, and that ignition barrel was coming through there. So we'll just check what that distance is, but if that's anything less than 80 millimeters, that in itself, because of the barrel length, is going to foul, and so that would need to be adjusted. So let's have a look at that. I'll come back to you and let you know what that was. As fate would have it, that distance is 67 millimeters. So by putting that ignition barrel back through there, that is going to hit the back of this. Now, you're not going to be moving that anymore because that's where it needs to sit. We can't move it back that way any further to increase the gap because the yoke is in the final position, in the closed position, to give sufficient clearance off the front of the panel. How are we going to fix that one? Well, the way that we're going to fix that one is we're going to re-3D print this particular item and pick that up and take it up that way so we can get it out of the way of that particular foot there. Fundamentally, the ignition barrel needed to be moved up by about 60 or 70 millimeters from memory. So that's fundamentally what needs to happen. So I've taken the opportunity as well, and whilst these traditionally are breakers, what I'm going to do is actually not have them as active breakers, but I'm just going to have them as little toggle switches, purely for aesthetic reasons. And I think that'll look okay. It's not ideal, but I think it'll come up pretty good. So the next step is to basically, now that these are 3D printed, and there's two parts to this, by the way, there's this and this one here. If I can put these two together, and you get an idea of what that'll look like. So once that's sandwiched together quite cleanly, you can see that it'll actually look pretty good. So imagine a whole suite of toggle switches through there. This will be painted grey, and then I'll wet and dry to reveal the raised lettering. And you probably can't see that there, but if I just tilt that around, you can see that I've got raised lettering on that. That was all done and modelled in Fusion 360. Here's the toggle switches that I'm talking about that I'm going to use in the breaker panel. So literally just a flick switch on and off like that. And you'll just obviously see that part of it protruding out through the panel. And I bought a whole stack of them. Though from memory, bought them in bulk. There's about 30 of them that I need, and I think I paid about $2 Australian for each of these switches. So about 60 bucks. To get all of the various switches. Now again, you know, later on, should I choose that I want to do something with them, then obviously I've got the wiring lugs at the back there that I can choose them for a function, but at the moment they're purely going to be for aesthetics. So I'm keen on seeing how this will come up once it's all done. Let's get into the garage and paint it up. Righto, in the garage now, you can see I've just got these mounted onto little bits of timber just to get them off the ground. Now the paint that I'll be using is a Rust-Oleum, this stuff here, 2X. I've previously used a gloss dark grey. I think and I've got some of this left over, so I'll use this again, but I think if you were to do it from scratch, my advice would be to go for a matte finish, not a gloss finish. And the reason for that is because you get some sheen otherwise coming off of your panels, which can sometimes affect the lighting and camera work inside of your cockpit. So where you can, go for a matte finish rather than a gloss. But I'll use this. It'll be down, you know, down on the lower left anyway as a breaker panel, so it probably won't be too bad, and it'll match with everything else anyway. So anyway, so that's it there. Let's get this painted up. Probably only take one coat. It's pretty good, pretty absorbent. So yeah, let's see what it looks like once it's done, and then I'll show you the wet and dry process. So that's them now painted up, and you can see what I mean. So this is obviously purely wet at the moment, but you can see the light sheen. So you're going to get that if you use a gloss. Obviously, as the angle of the camera goes down, you lose it a bit there, but depending on the lighting, you're going to get this glossing happening. So thoroughly recommend that you go for a matte finish paint, not necessarily a gloss. Okay, so as you can see, they're all painted up at the moment. So now what I'm going to do is I'm masking that up across there, and then just to expose that raised lettering, and then I'll use this wet and dry that I've got here. This is just simple wet and dry sandpaper. It's fairly fine, that you can get from any local hardware store, and I'll use that just with some water, and we'll just do that slowly over that, and that'll reveal that lettering, and it should come up pretty well. So let's give that a try and see where it goes. Just a little tip for you as well, when you mask it up, just make sure that you tape it down around the perimeter quite extensively. That's just to stop it shifting around, because when you put the water over it and then you start to obviously very delicately move your wet and dry back and forward, after a while, once the water can sort of seep underneath here, and it might actually start to move. So I just do an extra layer all around the outside like that and mask it up to stop the water from bleeding in underneath, and then over time starting to make that work loose. So just good to keep the piece steady. It's not the best of jobs. It sort of gives a bit more of a worn look really, but with wet and dry it's not too bad. The best way to do it, if you were to do it, if you had a laser cutter and you could use it in etching mode, then a laser cutter will definitely give you the best result, because you can apply your paint and literally etch the paint off, so it'll give you a much cleaner result. Laser cutter definitely the way to go on a piece of acrylic. I'll just zoom in for you there. You can see there are some imperfections, but you know, I think at the end of the day it's underneath the dash. It's away down below, and it just gives it a little bit of an effect, which I think will look quite good once it's all done up. What I'll do now is put those little toggles in and show you what the finished product will look like. So there you have it, everyone. Switches in, and yeah, it hasn't come up too bad. I think from an aesthetic point of view, it'll look pretty good. As I mentioned before, much better if you can have a laser cutter and use the etching function. There's a little bit of sort of debris and bits and pieces through here which I need to clean up a little bit, but I think by and large using the white PLA and then using wet and dry over it, yeah, you get that effect, which I think looks pretty good for the raised lettering. Anyway, once I get the upgrades done, I'm going to put this back into the sim.